Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth and the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case. My friend Matilda, she did it, but I'm getting ahead of myself. This all started when Sadie moved into a new home. 25 years old, a nice car, a new house, and a cat. She liked cats. They are self-sufficient, but at the same time, loving balls of fluff and affection. Her cat was always with her and followed her from room to room. Her cat, Matilda, was also her best friend. Not just words, they really were friends. They talked to each other and slept together. Moving into the house and setting it up was seriously the first adult thing she ever did. She got the house for a great price, and the previous owners told her they needed to sell fast because they took a job in California and needed to be there by the first of the month. She remembered this house when she was little. Her aunt lived here, and her mom and her would visit a few times a month. Her aunt had a little girl she played with when she was there. Maddie was her name. They loved playing dress-up and could play forever. She had a favorite doll she carried with her everywhere. It was an off-brand Barbie-type doll, but it was dressed like a hippie and had blue hair. Sadie thought that was the coolest doll in the world, and when they played, the doll went on adventures, traveled all over the world, and always came home from her trip and took a nap. Sadie and her mom went to the house one day, but Maddie wasn't there. Her mom told her she was gone. Sadie figured she had moved and went in to play with the toys again. But Sadie felt like Maddie was there, playing with her. Maddie told her she would be with her forever, and she was. Sadie and her mom would come over, and Sadie would go to Maddie's room and play. She knew Maddie was there, in the room. Maddie told her where she was, but it did not make sense. Sadie never told an adult what Maddie told her. They stopped going over to the house after a few months. She thinks they moved out and went to another town. She heard her mom telling someone that they went upstate. They never talked about where, nor did they mention a place, just upstate. Sadie grew up and did well in school. She knew things thanks to Maddie, and because of that, she got away with a lot that she shouldn't have. But once she started college, that feeling and precog inkling disappeared. These days, she never thinks about it. Lately, though, she's getting that little tickle again. She knows things and has a familiar feeling that she can't shake. At night, she dreams amazing dreams. During the day, she sees things around her, people, events, and places she dreamed about the night before. Maddie was back. The little girl, Maddie, not someone her age. She thought about that, and it made sense to her. She knew her at the age of 6 and 7, and to Sadie, Maddie would always be 7 years old and carry the hippie doll with blue hair. A few weeks after they moved into the house, Matilda started a strange ritual. When Sadie came home from work, Matilda would be in the corner of the living room, relaxed but seeming to be scared or nervous. She would walk over and pick her up, but this time, she realized the floor was a little soft. It felt spongy. She called a contractor, Robin and Wilhelmina Ruck, and on Saturday, he and his wife stopped by to evaluate the work. He measured, tested, and told her $600 to make it solid again. She agreed, and they would start on it Monday morning. The contractors lived a few doors away, and she had no issue telling them she would leave the key on a magnet in the mailbox next to the front door. At 8 o'clock, she left for work, leaving the key where she had said. and at 10:30 on the dot, Wilhelmina called and told her she needed to get home now. It took her half an hour to get home, and when she did, there were police cars, a coroner, and more people in front of and inside her home than she thought possible. As she parked at the end of her driveway, she was approached by a pair of plain-clothed detectives, a man and a woman. "Are you Miss Roberts?" the man asked. "I am." "What's going on?" Sadie asked. "I am Detective Marlowe, and this is Detective Finley. We are here investigating the incident in your living room." Okay, she was confused, and looking at her face, you could see the disconnect between what she knew and what they just said to her. Sadie said, "What incident?" Detective Finley asked. "You have no idea?" Sadie shook her head, hoping someone would fill her in. Detective Marlowe said, "It appears that your contractor opened a section of your floor this morning to do the repair you asked him to do and found something rather disturbing." She stared at him like he was about to grow a third eye. He looked at her, she knew, waiting for her to say something, but she didn't. He continued, "They found the remains of a child, wrapped in plastic, airtight. Her neck was broken. Can you shed some light on any of this?" "Number, I can't. I bought this house a month or so ago and moved in. I always liked this house and was happy it went on the market." Detective Finley said, "You are familiar with this house?" "In a way. When I was little, maybe 6 or 7 years old, my mom and I used to visit here. I called the lady Aunt Roberta. I think their last name was Powell. Now I realize she was not any relation, just a friend of my mother. She had a daughter, Maddie, that I played with when I was here." The detective added, "What happened to them?" "All I remember is that they moved upstate." "Where upstate?" Marlowe asked. "No idea. All they ever said was upstate, never a city name." "Can we speak to your mother?" "How can we get in contact with her?" Finley asked. Sadie smiled ever so slightly. Before she could speak, Finley asked, "Why the grin?" "I have a rather interesting sense of humor, always have. I almost told you to contact my mom by seance, which made me smile. My mother died a couple of years ago from cancer." "Sorry to hear that." Both detectives narrowed their eyes at the comment, but they let it pass. "Is there anyone you know who can tell us about Roberta and Maddie?" "I have no clue. Until last night, I forgot all about this." Both detectives showed a curiosity in their eyes, speaking together. "Last night? It's kinda silly, but I dreamt about Maddie and I last night. We played in her room as our parents had coffee and sat at the kitchen table. Probably because yesterday I went up to the attic and it looked like no one had been there in a long time. It was covered in dust. But I found a box marked Maddie's things. I opened it and found a hairbrush, her favorite one. We used to brush each other's hair back then." "Can we get that brush?" Marlowe asked. "Of course. It is still in the attic. Pull the cord in the hall and climb up. There is no light up there, so you'll need a flashlight." "You said it was covered in dust. Was there any disturbance in that dust?" Marlowe asked. "Well, other than my footprints, my shoe prints actually, there were children's prints in the dust. Bare feet. They looked fresh, so I thought the previous owners had a kid who went to the attic once before moving. We need to check out that attic." Marlowe looked at Finley, who nodded. He donned gloves and booties and headed into the house. "Can we go inside? I would like to see how much of my home is disassembled." Finley gestured, and they went into the house. The contractors sat at the breakfast bar, and Sadie walked over to them. Finley followed. Mr. Ruck said, It appears your floor was so bad because someone removed and did not properly replace it after they buried the body. At that moment, the clear plastic containing the bones of a child was extracted from the floor. Sadie looked at it and was shocked. "That's Maddie," she exclaimed. "How do you know?" "That doll, it's unmistakable. She took it everywhere with her. Maddie and I used to play with it all the time." Finley walked over and looked at the digital images they had taken before they moved the bones. She looked and found the doll. In the image, the skeleton was lying on its back, the doll on its chest, and the hands of the victim holding the doll. Whoever did this knew the relationship between the girl and the doll. Finley returned to the three onlookers as Marlowe returned with the box of Maddie's possessions. "I found the brush. Maybe we can make a positive ID of the little girl," he said. Finley replied, "No need." Sadie made a positive ID. He looked at the skeleton. "How?" "That doll. They played with it when they played together." "Are you certain, Miss Roberts?" "I am. I know it. I feel it. Look at the doll. On its left hand, you'll see a couple of fingers missing. Her cat chewed them off." She grabbed the tablet and found the picture of the left hand. Fingers were missing. "Okay then. Maddie has been found and will be properly laid to rest. First, our ME needs to examine her. She was my friend when I was little. Let me know when I can properly bury her. We'll keep you informed." They left the house, and in a few minutes, the other cops and everyone else left. Mr. and Mrs. Ruck and Sadie were left alone. Matilda came from the back of the house and hopped onto the counter. She snuggled to her owner. "I think I will call it a night. I can take care of it in a few hours tomorrow. I have all the measurements, and the detectives said they would not need to return to the hole. So, tomorrow, it will look like it was never an issue." "Thank you." He walked over and covered the hole with a tarp, stapling it to the plywood around the hole. Sadie knew it was a critter barrier and to stop the weather from getting into the house. Once they left, Sadie sat on the couch facing the hole. Matilda sat on her lap but had not moved for over an hour. Maybe 15 minutes passed, and the hair on Matilda's back started to rise. Sadie felt it too. The room got cold, and the hairs on Sadie's neck began to rise. Matilda's back was hunched, and she was staring at the tarp. Her eyes focused on the tarp, and her pupils were their maximum size. She was looking for something, or she saw something. The tarp pushed up slightly, and Matilda hissed. Sadie calmed her. As she did, she saw her friend rising through the tarp, and she was holding the doll. More precisely, she could see through her friend. "Thank you." Her words sounded distant, echoed like they were in a great cavern. A moment later, Maddie began to fade until she was gone. Matilda settled back onto Sadie's lap. "Well, Matilda, I know now why I had to buy this house. Maddie needed to rest, and we needed to help her." Matilda gave the strangest meow Sadie had ever heard, and then started purring. Sadie sat on the couch a bit longer, thinking of playing with Maddie. It was a good memory. She did it. Now, her friend can rest. Murder warning. This is quite long. On Google Docs, it was 8 pages and 1,617 words long. I hope you like it, though. Eleanor Gray knew who the suspect was. She was one of the best detectives in Europe and never got a case wrong. But this one was different. Different because it was harder than her previous ones. Harder because all the suspects she had chosen could be guilty or innocent. It could be Riley or Olivia, but she knew it definitely wasn't Emma. Emma was too sweet. But Eleanor had chosen Emma as one of her suspects because she was there for the entire murder. She heard the helpless screams. She saw the scarlet blood. She saw the silver knife gleaming under the moon, dripped in blood. And she didn't do anything the entire time. Miss Gray. And for a while, Eleanor forgot she was at court. Miss Gray, may I not need you to forget that you are at court at this moment. You may daydream all you like when you leave, but for the moment, you shall pay full attention to me and the conversation. Judge Chester explained. I apologize, ma'am. I shall pay attention now, Eleanor said kindly. Judge Chester was very strict, but she was Miss Gray's favorite judge. She knew how to get the job done, and she never underestimated Eleanor, most likely because she was Judge Chester's once-removed cousin. Now, the judge said, let's get back to work. Miss Gray, would you like to tell us who you think the suspect is? Or would you like your last 3 suspects to explain what they were doing? I would like my suspects to explain first, please. Suspect number 1, Olivia Bailey. Explain what you were doing at the time of the murder, Judge Chester shouted over the microphone. My name is Olivia Bailey. A red-headed girl stood up with mint green eyes and a brown tan. She was wearing a long yellow flower dress with a jean jacket over it. And I did not murder Miss Amelia Bailey because she is my sister. Anybody who tries to kill her sister is a maniac. And may I inform you kindly that I cared for my sister deeply. I may not have shown her much affection like most siblings do, but now that she is dead, I regret it. I should have shown her more love. I was offended at the fact that you chose me as a suspect. Miss Gray, explain why you have chosen Mrs. Bailey as a suspect. Eleanor started explaining. I have chosen Olivia Bailey as one of my suspects for many reasons. 1, she may be Miss Amelia's sister, but sometimes the suspect is the one that is the least thought of. When the Bailey sisters were growing up, they fought a lot, and most of the time, Amelia won. This murder may have been Olivia's revenge. 2, Mrs. Olivia has been absent often and found mostly at weapon shops. The knife used was a knife Olivia once bought. She may have bought it to kill her sister. At this, Olivia looked horrified. She looked as if she was about to scream and cry. But thankfully, she kept her mouth shut. So Eleanor went on. But the knife may as well have been found by the murderer when they broke in. 3, I was hoping not to say this, but it seems as though I have to. Mrs. Olivia has been found practicing murdering techniques on a dummy in one of her friend's basements. She has been practicing throwing and penetrating the heart from a small in the back. Miss Amelia's body was found with a puncture in that same spot. That is my evidence that Mrs. Olivia might be the murderer. Eleanor finished. She stared at Olivia, who was starting back at her. She looked as if she wanted to say something. And the great thing about Judge Chester was that she knew that look. Mrs. Olivia Bailey, would you like to add something? Yes, please, she said. I would like to say that the information Miss Gray has given is false. 1. Yes, when we were children, we would fight, but we would play fight. Those times when I won was the times that my sister would let me, because we all knew that she was the better fighter in the family. I only fought her on occasion so that she could find new tricks. The judge looked quite fed up here. Mrs. Bailey, I understand where you are coming from, but we do not have the time for you to explain yourself. You may moan all you like, but for the time being, I have to trust the detective, Miss Gray. Now then, Miss Riley, explain what you were doing at the time of the murder. A tall girl with black hair and brown eyes stood up. She was wearing one of the shortest dresses Eleanor had ever seen. I didn't even know there was a murder until you told me before yesterday on the phone, she said, poised and calm. Too poised and calm, which wasn't natural for a suspect, unless they were the murderer, or she was just a calm person in general. But Eleanor and Riley had gone to the same school, and if Riley lacked something, it was calmness, patience, and calmness. It's not natural, Eleanor said, for somebody to be so calm when they are being interrogated. She was standing now and walking towards Riley, her blonde hair flowing in the air, her black hat covered over her hazel eyes, her jeans reaching her ankles where her black boots reached, her black leather jacket over a red shirt. One would think that a suspect would be fighting to stay out of prison, wouldn't they? A criminal would seem calm to cover up their fear. Wouldn't you say so? Miss Gray asked, slamming her hands on Riley's desk, leaning over to stare into her eyes, to see the truth. I disagree, Miss Gray, Riley responded. An innocent person would not fight because they would know that they do not need to serve time in prison. May I ask, Miss Riley, how many times you have been a detective trying to solve a crime? None. But if I must say so myself, I do watch a lot of court on television. And when we try to figure out who the criminal is, we are correct most of the time. And is court your favorite thing to watch? Yes. And at that, Miss Gray walked away and sat down, crossed legs on her desk, and hat tipped over her eyes, but keeping an eye on all three suspects. Now, Emma Williams, explain what you were doing at the time of the murder. I was working at my restaurant, ma'am, Emma said. She was the only one who wasn't wearing a dress. Instead, she wore a white top and gray leggings. Her brown hair covered her eyes, but Eleanor could still make out that they were the color of a storm at sea, a wild and free storm, but shy, just like Emma's character. "And what exactly do you do at your restaurant?" Miss Gray asked. "I am a waitress. I take orders of food and drinks. I am quite familiar with what a waitress is, but what I do not understand is how you know Miss Amelia Bailey. From all the records we have seen, we have not heard anything that mentions Miss Bailey. So tell me, Miss Williams, how do you know Amelia?" After a moment's hesitation, Emma said thoughtfully, "Our parents were close friends when they were younger. I grew alongside the Bailey sisters, but we kept it a secret." "That is all the information we need from you, Emma," Eleanor said in a flat tone. After thinking thoughtfully, "I have decided on who the criminal is." Judge Chester stared at Eleanor, though was not surprised. "I have decided," Miss Gray went on, "that the criminal is nobody." Everyone in the room was shocked. There were soft murmurs. Eleanor could only make out a few. "What does she mean by nobody? Surely she has made a mistake." "Silence," the judge shouted. "Miss Gray, I do not understand. There has been proof of Miss Amelia Bailey's death. How is there nobody who killed her?" "Let me explain." Eleanor started. "I am correct that only I saw the dead body, yes? Well, there was a puncture in her skin, in the same small of her back, as Miss Olivia was training. However, the sisters were only play fighting, like they did when they were little. They had agreed that they are allowed to use sharp weapons, and the reason Olivia was found training was for that match. Amelia was using their training room, and when the match started, Miss Amelia couldn't find her armor, so she thought she would be fine. Sadly, she died from blood loss. Yes, there was a puncture in her back, but it was very small, and somehow, overnight, she had died from blood loss. Miss Riley, you and Amelia were good friends when little, and you both loved watching court. I know from the information you gave me, you kept saying we instead of I or me. You meant Amelia as the other person, and Emma Williams. Or should I say Emma Bailey? Emma Amelia Bailey. Amelia had a twin sister, an unknown twin sister that Mr. and Mrs. Williams agreed on raising. I believe Amelia Bailey's full name is Amelia Emma Bailey. Yes, it is. So that concludes it. Nobody is guilty. Amelia Emma Bailey's death was unintentional. And she was finished. Another case closed. And she walked out of the hall to her apartment across the street. The Rolodex Robbery. Last week, tragedy struck, and my home was broken into. I came home exhausted from work one day to see the glass in my door shattered, cupboards ajar, papers strewn about the floor. Naturally, I sprinted back outside and immediately called the police as my heart was attempting to shatter my ribs. Thankfully, the police showed up fairly quickly and cleared the house. Whoever broke in was long gone. The one hand. I was relieved, because if I had walked fully in and they were still there, who knows what could have happened. On the other hand, I had no idea who did this, and now it would require an investigation. Once the crime scene investigators cleared the house for me to enter, I took a quick inventory of what was missing. TV? Still there. Jewelry? Here. Computer? It's been accessed, but nothing was added or deleted. Any major items of worth were still there, but I still had one more place to look. I went into my kitchen and checked the false bottom in the cupboard underneath my sink. My heart splattered into the floor when I saw that the safe that I normally kept there was missing. There was a giant, gaping hole in the dust where my super secure safe used to be. "Officers! Officers!" I cried. "I know what's missing. I know what they were after." One of them flipped to a new page in her notebook. "Okay? What is it?" "My family's secret recipes. They were all in a Rolodex that I kept in a triple-locked safe that was hidden underneath a cupboard." The two police officers shared a look. "Recipes? That's what all this is about?" I took a breath. "Yes, I know how it sounds. You need to understand that my family has been the top champion in every local, regional, and state bake-off for the last 10 years. I come from a very long line of exceptional bakers, and I'm willing to bet that if it came down to it, someone would kill for these recipes." Neither officer looked particularly convinced, but they wrote down my statement anyway. "All right, Ms. Norman. We'll analyze our evidence and start on the investigation. We'll get back to you if we get some answers." The police finally cleared out of my house, and I was left with the wreckage of the break-in. For the next 4 hours, I swept, wiped, mopped, and tried to get rid of any sign that someone had broken into my house. In doing all that, I had time to think. Chances are, it'll be a while before I get any answers. If I get any answers, I might just have to take matters into my own hands. Pouring myself a cup of tea, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my sink. Who would know where I keep those recipes? That's not a particularly obvious spot, and I haven't told many people about it. I haven't told many people about it. At that moment, I came up with a particularly genius plan, if I do say so myself. There are a select few people that are aware of not only my family's recipes, but also that hiding spot. That narrowed my suspect list down to 3 people: Julia, Angel, and Cameron. They're all my friends to an extent, but we met through a baking competition last year and bonded over our competitiveness. Normally, they're good people, but when it comes to baking, the gloves are off. I wouldn't put it past one of them to steal my recipes to give their holiday desserts an edge. Sitting at that table, I kept tapping my fingers in thought. The annoyance at both myself and the intruder settled deep in my stomach. I didn't mean for any of them to see that spot in the first place. I was cleaning up before they came over and had my headphones in, so I didn't hear them knock or come in. Honestly, them just coming in when I didn't answer the door should have been a red flag right there. Maison, I had just put the Rolodex away after returning a recipe to it when I turned around to find the three of them standing in my kitchen. After that, I should have just moved it, but at the time, I didn't think any of them would go as far as to break into my own home. I'm just glad my daughter wasn't home for any of this. Kate thankfully left yesterday to go a college friend's cabin for the week. I don't know what I would have done if she was here when the intruder broke in. Like I told the officer, people would kill for those recipes. Anyway, back to my plan. I figured that if I could get everyone together for a cookie swap, whoever stole my recipes would be almost certainly arrogant enough to try to outdo everyone else using one of them. Betcha they think that I haven't memorized every single secret ingredient that could distinguish those recipes. They would be wrong. The next day, I called all three of them, and we arranged for a cookie swap that Friday. I had 2 days to think about whoever is the most likely to steal my Rolodex and what kind of cookie I should make to destroy all of them. By the time the Friday of the swap rolled around, I had settled on an ooey-gooey, dark chocolate and peppermint cookie that had always been a hit of mine. What I hadn't settled on, however, was who the intruder could be. I had just pulled the last batch of cookies out of the oven when I heard the doorbell ring. I smoothed out my dress and put on my biggest smile before opening the door with the newly repaired window. "Hey!" I cheered. "Happy holidays!" Despite the freezing weather, they all smiled and greeted me in turn. I let them into the house and offered to take their cookies back to the kitchen. While they were preoccupied with discarding their bundles of layers, I snuck a peek at each of their cookies. Sprinkle-covered shortbread? Nope. We're not really a shortbread family. We prefer richer flavors. Sugar cookies? Like every family, we do have a classic sugar cookie recipe, but I can't be sure if this is it until I try it. Red velvet cookie with vanilla buttercream frosting? Now that sounds familiar. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to try this one too, to confirm. I grabbed the wine glasses and tucked the bottle under my arm to join my guests in the living room. For the first few minutes, we just chatted about small nothings. The weather, the traffic, how good the wine was, blah, blah, blah. So, Grace, what's new? Anything exciting happen recently? Angel asked. Do I tell them to see how they react? Or do I test their reactions by not saying anything? Nothing much. Work is busy as ever, and I'm just preparing for the holidays with Kate. Christmas shopping, decorating, the Christmas card. You know, the works, I tried to say, as casually as possible. Julia nodded along sympathetically. I feel ya. Between trying to get presents and wrap presents and fighting with the in-laws, who are staying with us right now, by the way, without asking first, I'm absolutely swamped. She sounds a little too busy to be breaking into my house. Congrats, Julia. You're at the bottom of the list. And you, Cameron? What's going on in your life? He took a sip of wine. A much calmer holiday season than you guys, apparently. Jason and I are having a pretty quiet Christmas this year. And unlike you all, I'm not 60 and don't send out Christmas cards. We knew he meant well, but we jokingly acted insulted regardless. Well, you should. What else is your mother going to cry over when you don't return for Christmas? Angel said. Probably the margarita that she'll be sipping on the cruise that she and Dad booked for the holidays, he retorted. I chuckled at that. It didn't, however, change the fact that he had plenty of time to break in to my home. Angel, you're up, I said. Work, study, sleep, repeat. She groaned. Nursing school is kicking my butt. Why did I think this was a good idea? Because you want to further your career? And one day, get the big bucks, Julia supplied. Angel groaned again and threw her head back. But at what cost? The longer we all chatted, the more disappointed I knew I was going to be when I found out who broke in. I keep forgetting how much I like these guys. I decided to rip the bandage off. All right. Now for the main event. The cookies, I announced. I grabbed the cookies and returned them to their respective owners. I'd like to go first, Julia provided, holding open her container of shortbreads. We all reached in and grabbed one. I put it up to my lips and took a bite, crumbly, but not too dry. Sweet, but not overbearing. Still lacks a bit of flavor. Overall, for a shortbread, that's not too bad. Next up was Angel. We each took a frosted sugar cookie, elegant design with the decorating, not too dense, still flavorful, and no secret ingredient. Guess she's off the hook. Finally, it was Cameron's turn. I carefully took a nibble of the red velvet cookie, and right away, I could tell something was off. Well, this doesn't taste right, and the secret ingredient certainly isn't in here. Jason's on a bit of a vegan kick right now. Personally, not a fan, but I still thought I'd give vegan red velvet cookies a shot, he explained. I swallowed the cookie down. The things we do for love. As everyone took one of my cookies, I took a moment to think. No one had any of the secret ingredient or used one of my family's recipes. So, either they're not as cocky as I thought, or they didn't do it. As everyone finished their assessments of my treat, I prepared my next move. Actually, when I said not much was happening, that was a lie. A few days ago, my house got broken into. My family's Rolodex of recipes was stolen. I glanced over their faces. Dang it. Nothing but pity or shock. I'm so sorry. That sucks. That's awful. Are you okay? Thank you, but I'm fine. Wait. Why are you telling us this now? Cameron asked, suspicious. Well? All of a sudden, my phone started ringing. One moment, I stepped away into the kitchen. Kate, sweetie, what's up? Everything all right? I asked. Yeah, Mom. I just had a quick question. How much flour goes into the sugar cookie recipe? That was not what I was expecting her to ask. What? How much flour is in the sugar cookie recipe? I can't read Grandma's handwriting for this part. I took a breath. Honey, do you have all the recipes? Yeah. Sorry. I left the kitchen all a mess. I couldn't remember where it was, and Aubrey was rushing me. And I promised everyone that we would make our special sugar cookies. I left it all in the note on the door. By the way, did the Franklin boys apologize for throwing an ice ball through the window? All the pieces were coming together. It was my daughter who took the recipes and made a mess, and the annoying boys across the street that shattered my door window. My house hadn't been broken into after all. Her note just must have fallen into the puddle from the ice ball and gotten ruined, so I didn't see it. I felt a lot better knowing that none of my friends were to blame for this. No, they didn't. But I'll talk to them later. It's 2.5 cups for one batch. And when you add the secret ingredient, do not let them see. Understood? I told her. And please, don't take the Rolodex without asking me again. Sorry, Mom. Will do. Thanks. Love you. Love you too, I said. Before hearing the tone, I came back out to the living room, 20 pounds lighter with that new information. Where were we? I asked. You were telling us why you're just now sharing the news that your house was broken into, Cameron supplied. I looked at my friends, who could be competitive, but deep down would never go this far, and I felt guilty for ever thinking they could have done this. Just to be dramatic, I suppose, I said. With that, they all smiled, nudging my shoulder. Angel said, "Well, leave it to you." I smiled back and took a bite of my own cookie. Secret recipes or not, I'm a dang good baker. Who killed Amu's son? A loud scream pierced the stillness of the night, and it sent chills down my spine. I heard someone crying in the neighbor's house. The time in the clock showed 12:45 a.m. I was here at my aunt's house, enjoying a long vacation. After my final year degree exams, I knocked on my aunt's door, knowing that she must be fast asleep after taking her medicines. My aunt opened her door, looking worried and groggy. I heard some screams from the neighbor's house. I think there is some problem. I am going there to inquire, I said. She said she would come too, as she didn't want me to go alone. It was warm and sultry outside. We started walking towards the house in the dim lights of the street, amidst the cloud calls of night insects all around us. My aunt lived in a small, beautiful village in Kerala, which was just an hour away from the city. Her only son had migrated to Canada a few years ago and wanted my aunt to join him. But she always refused, saying she was happy in her little village, surrounded by friends and relatives, and didn't want to be uprooted. The distance to the neighbor's house was not much. There were paddy fields all around, bordered by huge coconut trees, which were swaying in the mild breeze. It was a huge house, away from all the other houses that led to a long, narrow pathway connecting the main road ahead. The house belonged to Amu, a 70-year-old widow who had suffered a paralytic stroke. Few years back since then, had spent most of her time in a wheelchair. Amna, a middle-aged lady, was hired as a nurse, come companion, to take care of her, and she lived with Amu in the same house as she had no family of her own. There was a cook and a maid who would come in the morning and leave by evening. The lights were on in all the rooms, and the main door was open. We saw Amu huddled in the wheelchair, weeping bitterly, with Amna standing beside her. As soon as we entered, Amna came running to my aunt. She was crying, her face contorted with fear, saying nothing we could understand. My aunt calmed her down, and I went to pacify Amu, who was in a bad shape. Through their sobs, we gathered that Amu's son was lying dead in his room above, and it seemed someone had strangled him. My aunt was too stunned to react, and didn't know what to say or do. We just stood there, watching Amu and her nurse clinging to each other and sobbing. By this time, some more neighbors walked in, hearing the commotion. My aunt told them what had happened, and one of them called for the police. The police came in quickly with a doctor who examined the body and declared him dead. They took charge of the body and looked around for fingerprints and other clues. There were no fingerprints, as if the killer had wiped it all after committing the crime. An ambulance was called in, and the body was taken to the hospital for post-mortem. The police came down to interrogate Amu and the nurse. Amna said around 12 a.m. they heard Dev, Amu's son, enter the house as he had his own set of keys. They heard some voices. The son was talking to someone, but they didn't think much about it, as he was in the habit of bringing his friends home, and they would have another round of drinks, which would go on till wee hours of morning. She and Amu then went back to sleep. Amna always slept in Amu's room, in case she needed some assistance during the night. After a while, they woke up to a loud thud and heard footsteps running down the stairs. By the time Amna came out, the intruder was long gone. She found the main door was wide open. Sensing trouble, she called out to Amu's son, but he didn't reply, and so she went up to check on him. Except for a night lamp, all the lights of his room switched off. He was lying on the floor, motionless. She went near him and saw some ligature marks on his neck. Being a nurse, she recognized those marks. She checked his pulse and found none. She ran down screaming. Amu was devastated to hear the news and had been sobbing since then. The police turned to her to record her statement, but she was in no state to say anything. They said they would come again to interrogate Amu. They sealed the room and warned that no one should enter the scene of crime. It's going to be a long night, so you can go home and sleep, my aunt said. I told her I'm fine, as I wanted to be with her. We stayed with Amu the whole night. She was sobbing and calling out to her only child. A doctor was called in, who gave her a sedative that soon took effect, and Amu fell asleep. It was nearly 5 a.m. when we returned home, and none of us could sleep anymore. My aunt made us coffee, and we sat at the long wooden table in the kitchen, discussing the turn of events. She looked perturbed. She said, "It's the first time such a horrific incident had taken place. The village was very safe, and they all lived like one big family. I was aware of it, as I always visited her during my school and college vacations, and it was a second home for me. Amu's husband was a wealthy landlord, and he owned nearly a quarter of the total land in the area. Amu was a very pious lady who always helped the poor, and no one returned empty-handed from her doorstep. There was an orphanage for destitute children and a home for senior citizens, totally funded by Amu. She owned many paddy and rubber plantations, from where she earned all the income. Her only son, Dev, turned out to be a lazy scoundrel. I never got along with him because he was always arrogant and rude, even as a schoolboy. He never helped in the family business. He kept bad company and often picked fights with the villagers, and sometimes even misbehaved with the ladies of the village. People tolerated him because of Amu, or he would have been languishing in jail for some time now. He had raped a poor, innocent girl, Minu, from the village, who eventually committed suicide, and Amu had hushed up the matter by compensating the girl's family handsomely, asking them to leave the village. Everyone in the village hated Dev, being the only child. Amu had spoiled him rotten. She was blind to his faults and indulged him by fulfilling all his demands, and this took him further on the road of destruction. Too late, the consequences of her indulgence dawned upon Amu. Now she was keeping a tight fist on her money, which infuriated the son even more. And there were instances where he had raised his hand on his old invalid mother for money. Once he had hit Amu so bad that she had to be hospitalized for her injuries, but she told the doctors that she fell in the bathroom. He always treated Omna as a minion and left no chance to belittle her, which she ignored only for Amu. The next day, the police came to interrogate Amu. They said the post-mortem report revealed that the alcohol level was very high in the victim's blood, and he didn't put up any resistance to the murderer. They asked Amu if she suspected anyone, She said he had many enemies, and it was difficult to pinpoint any one person. "Are any valuables missing?" asked the policeman. Amu said she kept everything in the bank, except for a little money for her personal expenses in the house. The police ruled out robbery as a motive and felt it must be some personal enmity. They had also checked his call details, but did not find anything suspicious. The last rites of Amu's son took place the next day. Amu sat there, stony-faced and dry-eyed. The whole village had turned up for the funeral, more out of respect for Amu than for her son. The police summoned her son's friends to interrogate them. They told the police that they were all drinking together in the bar, and after some time, everyone left for their respective homes. Their call records were checked, their family interrogated, but no incriminating evidence was found against them. All the goons and miscreants from the village were rounded up for questioning, but the police couldn't find any concrete evidence against any of them, and they were let off, as they all had cast iron alibis. They interrogated everyone from the village, including my aunt and me. The investigation progressed, but nothing much came out of it. The police returned after 2 weeks and told Amu that they have found no clue to conclude. It was an outsider's job. They wanted to interrogate Amna, the cook, and the maid again. The cook and the maid said they both had left the house in the evening. Amna repeated her same story, supported by Amu. The police did not argue much, and they left, saying they would keep the investigation on, and if they get any further information, they would let her know. Soon, a month passed, and it was time for me to return home. I booked my flight for the following Sunday evening, 10 p.m. I wanted to go and meet Amu, but she's still in a state of shock and wasn't meeting anyone. My aunt was feeling bad that I had to witness this horrific incident, but I assured her that I was fine. At 8 p.m., the cab driver called to say he was waiting at the end of the road to avoid the potholes and asked me to walk up to the cab. I didn't mind, as I had only one bag, and it wasn't much of a distance. I bid my aunt goodbye, promising to visit her soon, and started walking down the road. I walked past Amu's house, which was in darkness, except for a night lamp in the living room. Amu slept early, by 8 p.m., and no one was allowed to disturb her once she was in bed. I heard some voices coming from her living room. Thinking she was still awake, I peeped from the window to shout out a final goodbye. The sight inside chilled my bones. Amu was walking towards the staircase erect and without any support. She climbed the stairs and within no time disappeared inside the room. Amna was sitting near the lamp and reading a book. I was too scared to move or speak and stood rooted to the spot. I managed to reach the cab and literally collapsed on the seat. Throughout my journey, that scene haunted me. Amu could walk? Why was she hiding this fact? Was she the one who climbed up and strangled her son? Or was it Amna? Did they tell lies to the police that they had heard Dev talking to someone the night of murder? I was befuddled by all these questions and couldn't find any answers. I reached the airport by 8:30, checked in, and sat down in a corner, lost in thought. Mr. Roy! Mr. Roy! Someone was shaking me rudely. I saw 3 policemen standing before me. I was wondering, why were they calling my name? You will have to come with us, as you're under arrest for the murder of Amu's son, Dev, one of them said loudly. Before I could react, they handcuffed me and bundled me into their jeep. My aunt was already in the police station, crying and looking at me in disbelief. How can you arrest me? Do you have any proof? I shouted. The inspector looked at me with a gleam in his eyes and asked me, do you deny that you know Minu? The girl who committed suicide after she was raped. Weren't you in love with her? Isn't it true, the moment you realized that Amu's son had raped her, you wanted to kill him? Didn't you come with a plan to murder Dev? He was throwing questions at me, one after the other, without waiting for an answer. The inspector said that after interrogating almost everyone from the village, he was perplexed, as he couldn't find any evidence against anyone. So, on a hunch, he went to meet Minu's father, who lived in another district. The father was still grieving his daughter's death. He told the inspector that his daughter was a talented artist and had received a scholarship from a reputed arts college, which had been her dream. He proudly showed all her paintings to the inspector. Among those paintings was one of mine, which the inspector instantly recognized. He asked the father about the picture. The father told him that his daughter was in love with this boy. And that moment, the inspector knew it was me. He said that night, I left the house after my aunt went to sleep, knowing she takes sleeping pills and won't wake up until morning. I waited for Dev outside his house and persuaded him to invite me in on the pretext of discuss something important. The moment we went to his room, I strangulated him. I pleaded with them that it's all just a bunch of lies and false implications. I can never murder anyone, but everything I said was falling in deaf ears. I wanted to tell them about Amu's secret, but no one would believe me. My mind was numb. I was trying to recollect the events of that night before I heard the piercing scream, but everything was blank. I couldn't remember anything. Was it possible that I had murdered Dev? I felt an icy grip squeezing my heart. Ransom. 911. What's your emergency? An operator spoke through the phone. I need help. My parents were kidnapped, I screamed as I ran through the front door. Can you tell us about your location? They answered. We will send someone over as soon as possible. Yes, please. My house is located on Carnaby Street, and the building number is 544. I quickly answered. I could barely keep the phone up because my hands were trembling so vigorously. Some people in black masks broke in through my parents' window and kidnapped them. They just escaped now in a white van. I will let the officers know that. They should be close by now, so it'll be okay, the operator said, with a calm, reassuring voice. This helped me calm down a little bit. Before the operator hung up the call, they told me that the officers were here at last, and that they can take it from here. Around the corner of my street, 3 cars, flashing red and blue, speeded over. The officers had finally arrived. They parked in front of my house, and all of them got out of their cars almost simultaneously. I ran over to them to tell them about what happened, but they already knew the gist of it. Don't worry, kid. We have sent officers and even called in a helicopter to search for your parents, they told me. Though it might take some time because the vehicle is nowhere in this area. Hearing that, I started to worry all over again. What happens if they can't find them? Will I ever see my parents again? As those scary thoughts ran wild in my head, my phone started to ring again. The caller's name read, "No caller ID." I answered the phone and put it up to my ear. "Listen up and listen well," someone spoke. "We have your parents with us right now. If you want them to stay alive, you shall do exactly what I tell you." It was them. The same people who kidnapped my parents were now calling me through my phone. "I do anything. Just please don't hurt them," I exclaimed. "Good," they replied. "To save your parents, you will need to pay up a ransom of 10,000. You have a full week. If you don't manage to make enough money, your parents are as good as dead. And one more thing. If you tell anyone about this, we will know." I had no choice but to accept the harsh demand. If I didn't, then my parents were going to be killed. "Fine, I'll do. Give me 1 week," I replied to them. When they heard those words, they immediately hung up the phone, as if they were in a hurry. The officers spread out around the house to investigate the crime scene. Luckily, none of them were around me while I was having that conversation. Or else, that would have been bad. They searched for a whole hour, and some even interrogated me as a witness. After some time later, all the officers had left to further look into the case. I have left home, all alone, but that wasn't what was bothering me. The kidnappers demanded a ransom of 10,000, but I had not the slightest idea how to earn that much money, which put me at the right spot. A day had passed, and I tried to look around for jobs. However, not a single one of them accepted me because of my age. Next, I tried to get my relatives to lend me some money. I couldn't tell them what was going on, so I made up a lie and told them I needed it for educational purposes. Surprisingly, all of them accepted my request and lent me a total of 5,000. I was halfway there. Another 3 days had passed, and now my total was at 7,960. During those 3 days, I created a little cleaning business. I went door to door, asking a stranger if they wanted my services for the low cost of 150. I lived in a pretty rich neighborhood, so not many people refused my offer. Another day went by, and now my total was at $8,100. I had 2 more days to collect all the money. At the rate I was earning money, I was sure to reach it. But prosperous days never last. My phone, which was stashed away in my left pocket, started to ring. I pulled it out and felt a jolt of fear rush through my body. The person calling me was a no-caller ID. It was them, for sure. Knowing this, I had no choice but to answer. "Hey there, little guy," the kidnapper teased me. "I can tell you've been working hard to get the money." "Yes, I have. In 2 more days, Yeah, about that," they said, interrupting me. "We have decided that we want our money now. You see, one of our criminal buddies has been put in jail, and we need to bail him out." "Wait, no. That wasn't what we agreed on," I yelled at them. "The deal is supposed to end in 2 days. The person on the phone completely ignored the complaint and started, "So, do you have the money? Your parents are safe for now, and you can save them." I didn't have enough. My total, as of right now, was at $8,100, which left me $900 short. What are they going to do? I don't have enough. But I am so close. I have 8,100. That isn't enough, they interrupted me in an angry tone. "Bring them out." He clearly wasn't talking to me. Rather, it seemed like the caller was talking to someone else. "Since you couldn't hold up the end of the bargain, we will have to dispose of your parents," the kidnapper said. "However, let's make this a little more interesting, shall we?" The kidnapper paused for a moment to collect his thought, while I was just standing there, processing everything he had just said. "I will let you choose who dies, either your mom or dad." As those words reached my brain, my heart almost stopped. "This isn't happening. You have 10 seconds, he said. "If you don't choose, they both die." My task was to choose which one dies, and it has to be between my mom and dad. If I didn't choose, they would both die. 10. The kidnapper started to count down. While this was happening, I was frozen in the midst of my raging thoughts. 9. What am I going to do? I have to choose one, or both of my parents are going to die. 8. How could I just choose one? I want both of them to be with me. But I needed to choose. 7. I need to choose, but I can't. I can't live in a world without both of them. I need them both. 6. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. 5. Wait, please take me instead of my parents, I cried out. The kidnapper, completely ignoring me once again, continued to count down. 4. It's no good. I'm forced to choose. This can't be happening, right? 3. My thoughts started to get jumbled. I could not think straight at this point. My heart was beating so fast, that it felt like it was going to drop dead any moment. 2 seconds remained, and I still hadn't come up with a decision. Is this how it ends? Was all my hard work for nothing? 1. At the last second, I had finally processed my thoughts. But by then, it was too late. Loud sounds boomed through the speaker of the phone. It was the sound of a gun's firing. Then I noticed what had just happened. On that unfaithful day, both of my parents were killed, just because I couldn't make a proper decision. Murder. Everything happened in a flash. I was just about to go to sleep when I heard the telephone ring. I used a rotary dial phone, which meant that I won't know who's calling me. I walked over to the phone and held it up to my ear. "Hello?" I answered. "Hello. This is the Glasscam Police Department. I am the sheriff of this town. You have been convicted of the murder of a person named Paul Smith, who was killed this night. I have sent a few officers to escort you to the department," the sheriff replied. Excuse me, but I haven't done anything wrong," I replied, stammering. "I was in my home during the evening." "Yeah, right. Tell that to the judge, kid," he said in a sarcastic tone. A knock on the door was heard a few moments later. As I opened the door, a swarm of officers piled into the room, some with guns facing at me. One of them, who I assumed was the chief of police, got a pair of handcuffs and tied them around my wrists. "You have the right to remain silent," said the chief. I tried telling him that I was innocent, but he said the same words that the sheriff said. What a coincidence, I thought to myself, as I was being taken to the back seat of the police car. I don't remember much after that. While I was in the car, I kept arguing that I was innocent, but the officers ignored me. My height and weight were taken after I got to the station, and I was placed in a small cell. It wasn't cozy at all. Just the life essentials were there. A bed, sink, and toilet. I was too weak and tired to stand, so I started to lie on the bed, starting to drift into my sleep. I woke up to the sound of an officer opening my cell. I got up and was put in handcuffs again. He told me I was going to a trial. I had no lawyer, so they just gave me one. From the looks of the lawyer's crinkled and dirty tie, his wild hair, and slightly broken glasses, I could tell I was going to lose in this trial. A few minutes later, a car came, and I was taken into the back seat. What felt like hours later, I was in front of the judge, who would decide my fate. Looking at the spectators, I saw a group of people in tears. I assumed they were the victims' parents. They saw me looking in their direction. They scowled at me and turned their heads in disgust. I couldn't take it. For all my life, I have never made any mistakes, so it would be unreasonable if I was accused of murder. Thinking about this made my head spin. After my testimony and the lawyer's argument with the victim's family's lawyer, it was time for the jury to decide. A few minutes later, the judge said the final statement of the trial. I only remembered a little bit. The accused, James Johnson, proven guilty, with no chance of parole, no chance of bail, can only be released until further evidence is discovered. This mumbo-jumbo is gonna take forever. Let's get to the point. James Johnson will serve a life sentence. Then, the gavel was heard. Snug fit? The officers joked when I finished switching my shirt and pants to the ugly, bright orange prison uniforms. Cell number 13 was where I was headed, just when I thought I had the chance to be released. The number 13 blocks the tunnel of hope, I thought to myself in a saddened tone. I wanted to prove everyone wrong, especially my friends, family, and the victim's family. But now, that chance was disappearing every second I was in this building. My family came to visit every so often. Mother and my 23-year-old brother came to visit me every day. Father died when I was 12, a few years after my brother was born. Mother always told me that I was going to be proven innocent. Greg, my brother, told me that he will find evidence to get me out. I chuckled. Everyone knows that Greg hated using his brain for education purposes, but this time he had some hope in his eyes, which I never noticed before. Being beaten up by other prisoners took some time being used to. The food there was the worst. I couldn't be somewhere without at least one person watching me. But most of the time, it was the prisoners looking for a fight. One day, I couldn't take it anymore. That day when my family visited, I asked them that I didn't like staying here anymore. Just a little while longer, Mother said with hope. I stared at my brother, wondering what Mother said. Question: good news or bad news? Greg asked. Why? I replied. Just answer the question, he said in an impatient tone. Okay. Calm down, I said. Bad news. I found a lead that might prove you innocent, but I hit a dead end, he said in a sad voice, while lowering his head in shame. But the good news is I broke through the dead end and found some evidence, he exclaimed, his head now up again. I was in shock. Without controlling it, I smiled. It was so goofy that Mother started to laugh, but in a hushed voice. My brother tried holding his laugh in, but he couldn't stop the burst that almost made him fall off his chair. Your court trial will begin tomorrow, he said. For the rest of the day, the thought of leaving this place made my heart feel warm. The day passed by without me even knowing it. Before sleeping, the thought struck me. What if the evidence doesn't work? Or the evidence proves me guilty again, I thought, before drifting to sleep. The next morning, I got up in a hopeful mood. The trial begins in about an hour. I quickly got ready and was taken into the court. I saw Mother, Greg, and the victim's family there. The victim's family was in a sour mood. I guess they were angry because, in their point of view, the murderer of their son was going to testify again, saying that he was innocent after being proven guilty. When Greg's evidence was in the spotlight, I thought that this might actually work. It showed that I was in my house the whole time during the murder. It showed what I did on that device during that time, which was mostly binge-watching a series. After the evidence was shown, the jury made their decision and passed it to the judge. The judge read it out loud. The accused, James Johnson, had previously been proven guilty, had no chance of parole, no chance of bail, and could only be released until further evidence is discovered. But now the evidence has been found. The jury and I have reviewed it. The conclusion was made. The decision is, exclaimed the judge in a very dramatic and suspenseful moment. James Johnson is innocent. I was happier than ever, but didn't make any goofy grins this time. The victim's family nodded in sorrow and regret for making those rude faces at me. I was taken home where familiar noises from the house and street filled me up with adrenaline. I walked out of the house and sat on the porch when I saw my family driving their car into the driveway. They hugged me and sat on the porch. We laughed and talked together as if nothing had happened. While enjoying ourselves, I started to ponder, what will I do next? Baby revenge, Shalini. Life in New York seems to be carrying on as usual. Sirens are wailing in the air. The smell of hot dogs and coffee mingled in the air. The noise of the traffic, honks blaring, traffic and pedestrian lights beeping filled the air, along with jazz music coming from shops. Somewhere, I could hear the subway train rumbling into the station, but in every New Yorker's mouth is the latest gossip news. The murder of the infamous supermodel, Laura Myers, who was pushed from her balcony of her penthouse and plunged to death by her ex-boyfriend, Lyle Summers. And few hours ago, Lyle Summers confessed for the murder of Laura Myers. I walk down the sidewalk, bumping onto people, hurrying back to my apartment. On the way, I stop over at the newsstand. On the front page of every magazines and newspapers was the picture of Laura Myers, looking glamorous in a photo shoot on one side, with the picture of Lyle Summers looking gaunt and disheveled, leaving the Manhattan police precinct. I pick up a newspaper and read the front headlines. The supermodel fell on her death. Boyfriend responsible for the murder. The headlines sounds like something out of a crime show. I paid a disgruntled-looking man who owns the newsstand and then shovel the newspaper into my bag before heading towards the subway station. My phone starts ringing, and I groaned as I look at the number on the screen. It was my friend, Jenna, who was calling. Hey, Jen, I answered, but Jenna broke in. "Shalini, have you heard the news?" Jenna shrieked. "Lara is murdered." "Yeah, it's the talk of the day," I mumbled as I climbed down the stairs to the subway station. "Hey, Jen, I am going to be on Subway. I'll call you back." And I cut off the connection before Jenna could reply. I got into the train and then sit next to two women who seemed to be carrying on some excited conversation. Little did I realize, as I sit next to them, that they were, of course, talking about Lara Myers' murder. I, anyway, sit next to them and pretend to be absorbed into my phone. "Oh my God, I can't believe Lara is dead," one of the women exclaimed, as if she was sad that she lost her sister or something. "Rather murdered by her boyfriend Lyle," the other woman snorted. "God, Lara and Lyle are not made for each other. I mean, I don't even know why a glamorous supermodel like Lara would date a nobody like Lyle. After all I heard, he is just a bartender working in some bar in Brooklyn. Did you hear the latest grapevine? Apparently, Lara was having an affair with Joshua Schoenberg." "The Joshua Schoenberg? Like the Senator Schoenberg's nephew? The one who looks so handsome, like a movie star? Like Ian Somerhalder?" "Yeah, that one. That's Lyle was jealous and upset, and that's why he ended up killing Lara." The woman shakes her head like she is disgusted. "About a month ago, at a fashion show, Lara and Lyle got into a heated argument that the security had called in to escort Lyle out. Well, finally, Lara decided to move with someone of her league," the woman replied. "Joshua and Lara would make perfect couple, rather than her and that bartender." I didn't realize that I was gripping my phone so hard that my knuckles were turning white. I had to prevent myself from lashing out at them, but they don't know who I am. To them, I am just a working woman on my way home after a busy day at work. Thankfully, I got off from the train and walked quickly towards my apartment, leaving behind the noise and into a somewhat bum and quiet neighborhood. I fumble with my apartment keys and quickly enter into my room, closing the door behind me. I dump my bag on the sofa and then sit heavily on the sofa and start sobbing. I then wipe my eyes with my hands and then get up, breathing deeply. Slowly, I dialed a number. After about a few rings, she picked it up. "Mama!" I started sobbing into the phone. Ciao. A few days before, I look at the pregnancy test and see the 2 lines on the stick. I am pregnant with Joshua Schoenberg's child. Should I feel joyous? I should, but lately I didn't. Joshua was not like the man I used to love. He told me that it was embarrassing to introduce me to his family because I am not white. I am a Sri Lankan. Then why did you date me? I have yelled at him. To my anger, Joshua simply shrugged. Because I enjoyed dating you, he replied with a smirk on his face. And gradually, I realized that he was having an affair, not just with an ordinary woman but with a glamorous supermodel named Laura Myers. He had taken her to places where he would never take me, and had even introduced Laura to his sister, Margot. Tears streamed down on my cheeks as I realize that he doesn't love me the way he does with Laura Myers. Racism is involved in this. I thought Joshua didn't have any racism in him, considering he was half Jewish through his father, whose family emigrated from Europe. But Joshua was too embarrassed to introduce me even to his family, because I was not white. Nonetheless, I decided to call Joshua and tell him the news. With shaking hands, I dial his number. After about 5 minutes, he answered the phone. "What now, Shalini?" he answered gruffly. "I am busy, Joshua," I stammered, and for a moment, my voice was frozen, as if I am unable to speak anything. "Shalini, I don't have time. I thought I gave you money." His tone was impatient. "I am pregnant," I blurted out loudly. There was utterance on the other end, and for a moment, I thought Joshua had ended the connection, but I heard his raspy outtake of breath. "Pregnant? What? I thought I made it clear," he began. "Please, Joshua, please don't tell me to abort the baby," I pleaded. "The baby can bring us back to—" "Shalini, I don't want a family with you. I have already chosen someone to spend life with," he said gruffly. "Do what you want with the baby. I don't care." And the line went dead. I stared at the phone. "Do what you want with the baby. I don't care." Those words felt like sharp, icy words in my heart. Joshua Schoenberg is heartless and a complete different person from the one I used to love. And then I made a decision. I pick up my bag and set off to find Laura Myers. I am going to ask her to leave Joshua Schoenberg alone, because I will do anything to keep my baby and make Joshua responsible for the baby. After all, he is the father. Murder at Kasserine Pass. Murder at Kasserine Pass. The Bo-Chebka Road, deep inside the Kasserine Pass, narrowed to little more than a camel track, along a dry riverbed and steep cliffs. Rooted in the pale sand, a grove of palm trees jutted out from the ground as if thrown down and forgotten long ago. The remnants of the U.S. 26th Regimental Combat Team used the shade of the palm trees to dig their foxholes. Covered in sand and blisters, men hacked until the exposed roots of the palm trees aggravated their progress. Collapsing, exhausted, they lay where they fell, swollen tongues aching for water. Lieutenant Myers walked among his men, giving words of encouragement, and promised water would arrive when teams returned from Ain Boudrias up the road. As an officer, he thanked and encouraged his men for their hard fight against the Germans. He hoped fresh troops, supplies, and ammunition would arrive by the next morning. But he couldn't make promises. Around 2 in the morning, a mule train arrived with water, and Lieutenant Myers saw every man drank his fill. Some even vomited after they drank too greedily. Others, familiar with working in the heat, sipped slowly and intentionally. Lieutenant Myers lay down in a foxhole as exhausted as the rest and drifted off to sleep. At 04:30, Sergeant Thicket woke the lieutenant for him to walk rounds once again. Walking from foxhole to foxhole, he leaned over and checked his men. In the dim light, low in the eastern sky, his outline became visible among the tall palm trees. Approximately 05 o'clock, a single shot rang out far to the left of his position. Lieutenant Myers clutched his chest and dropped to the ground. Confused men, roused by the shot, began returning fire into the vast, empty valley in front of them, thinking they were under attack. Less than a minute later, the firing stopped, and the medics pronounced Lieutenant Myers dead. Captain Williams' Task Force. Welvert, February 21st, 1943. Criminal Investigations Division, North Africa. I surveyed the ground where Lieutenant Myers lay after he'd been shot. It's possible a sniper took advantage of the early morning light, but further examination of the body suggests the shot came from much closer. The bullet struck the lieutenant on the upper left side of his chest. Damage to the heart and lungs, terminal. Some witnesses report hearing one shot, while others heard 2 or 3. The additional shots could have been an echo or edgy trigger fingers, as reported to me. Everyone began firing into the valley below. Firing stopped in less than a minute. No further casualties. Witnesses report the shot sounded nearest the last foxhole in the line, manned by Staff Sergeant Culver Anderson, Private First Class Andrew Taylor, and Private Jacob Clark. Interviews to follow. Suspect, Staff Sergeant Culver Anderson. Staff Sergeant Anderson. Witness say they heard a gunshot this morning from your foxhole around 500, said Captain Williams. Did you fire that shot? Captain Williams said, challenging him. No, sir. I heard a shot and thought the Germans were attacking, so I turned and looked around for them. I didn't see anyone, so I jumped out of my foxhole and ran along the line and told everyone to stop firing. Sergeant Anderson leaned forward, waving his hands in innocence. We are already low on ammunition, and we'd need it later if the Germans did attack, he said. Were you aware that the shot fired killed an officer? Asked Captain Williams. No, sir. Not until the firing died down. Rumor spread it might be an officer. I found out later, just like everyone else. Sergeant Anderson said. Were you alone in your foxhole, Sergeant? No, sir. There were 2 men with me, Private Taylor and Private Clark. They were sleeping, sir. I had the last watch, said Sergeant Anderson. Are you sure neither of them were awake and slipped away? Then maybe they fired the shot? Asked the captain. I'm sure of it, sir. I thought the shot came from behind me, and when I looked, I couldn't see anyone. It's possible a sniper hid on the hillside next to us. The sound of the shot may have been further beyond that, but these canyons are pretty steep. The explanation sounded plausible, But Captain Williams still didn't believe it came from the enemy. Captain Williams pivoted one last time and pointed a finger at Sergeant Anderson. "Sergeant Anderson, don't play games with me. Our witness said it came from your foxhole. It had to be you, Private Taylor or Private Clark. Which one of you did it?" "Sir, I don't know who fired the shot or where it came from. All I know is, while I stood my post, I heard a shot," Sergeant Anderson said, more agitated than before. Captain Williams knew men like Sergeant Anderson. These were the men who would do all they could to protect a green recruit. He knew they'd cover for the new guys who were gun-shy or over-eager to shoot. The possibility of an inexperienced soldier with an itchy trigger finger shooting the lieutenant thinking he saw the enemy. It was possible. He knew he'd never get a confession out of this man. Men like this were a rare breed in the Army. "Sergeant Anderson, we've been at Chebka Pass all of 18 hours. Everyone's tired after yesterday's fallback. We lost a lot of good men, and stragglers are still coming in across the line. These things happen. People get tired or confused, and no one really knows who they're fighting with every day. Is it possible you, or a man with you, mistook the lieutenant as an enemy soldier this morning?" "No, sir. I'd just met these men last night. I'd have known if anything were wrong, and nothing looked out of sorts. If there were anything, I'd have told you," said Sergeant Anderson. "That will be all, Sergeant. You're dismissed, and I'll be in touch if I need you. Captain Shugart is taking over your company." "Thank you, sir." Suspect, Private. First Class, Andrew Taylor. Private First Class Taylor. "I am Captain Williams with the CID. Do you know what the CID is?" said the captain. "Yes, sir. The CID is the Criminal Investigations Division of the United States Army, sir." "Very good, soldier. You're young to be a PFC. You've done well in the Army. I expect you'll be a corporal before long." "Yes, sir. I served in junior ROTC in high school. They gave me a bump in rank when I enlisted," said Private Taylor. "Wow, junior ROTC. You have the makings of an officer. Do you think you will try to be an officer someday?" asked the captain. "Well, geez, sir, I don't know. I've never thought about it much until the war started. I thought I'd have to go to college first," said Private Taylor. "No, of course not, son. Men of all ranks get promoted to second lieutenant. They're called field promotions. Have you ever heard of those?" "Well, yes, sir. I've heard of them, but I thought you needed to do something brave. I didn't think I've done anything brave yet." "Well, Corporal, it takes a special soldier, someone with real leadership, to get promoted in the ranks, especially to the rank of officer." Captain Williams called him a higher rank to gauge Private Taylor's reaction. "I'm only a private first class, sir. I have to wait a few more months to be a corporal." "See, there you go. Honesty. Honesty is an outstanding trait to have as a soldier. I think we should make honesty a prime factor in the field commissioning program. Don't you?" said the captain. "Well, I think so, sir. I think it would be important, said Private Taylor. That's good, soldier. I'm really glad you said that. And that brings me around to a question I have for you. Did you hear the gunshot this morning? Well, yes, sir. I heard it. Do you know where it came from? I'm not sure I know where it came from. It sounded nearby, but I couldn't be sure. I took the first watch and fell asleep around 2 a.m. You were sleeping. You had a rough day yesterday, and we lost a lot of good men. We lost another man this morning. What do you know about that? Yes, sir. It was a hard day yesterday. Private Taylor rubbed at his eyes as if trying to block out the images. I heard someone was shot, but I don't know much about it. Was it a sniper, sir? That's the rumor. Is that why I'm here this morning? Asked Private Taylor. Yes, Corporal. I mean Private Taylor. We lost a good man this morning. Lieutenant Myers died around 0500. The rumor is it came from a location near where you were sleeping. It's an unfortunate way to have a vacancy, but Lieutenant Myers died because of that shooting. Now we have a company without a lieutenant. We have a poor dead man who will never know justice. The truth will have to come out someday. If we could solve this mystery right away, things may just fall into place for the right person. Maybe even a new second lieutenant could rise through the ranks. What do you think about that? Private Taylor wiggled in his seat. He looked excited or uncomfortable. It was hard for the captain to tell. Honestly, sir, I woke up when the shooting started. I don't know where the shot came from, he said. Thank you, Private. I'll let you go, and if I need anything more, can I count on you to be honest with me? Yes, sir. Private Jacob Clark. Private Clark. I am Captain Williams, the lead investigator for the Criminal Investigative Division. Witnesses say you were near the location of the shot fired this morning that killed Lieutenant Myers. Is that correct? Yes, sir. I heard the shot. It was only one shot, said Private Clark. Do you know who fired the shot? Asked Captain Williams. Sir? Said Private Clark. The shot. Did you see who fired the shot? Asked the captain. I remember nothing. It all happened so fast, said the private. If you knew who it is, are you aware it is a crime to withhold information about the person involved? Yes, sir. Are you saying you know who fired the shot? Asked the captain. Sir, no, sir. It all happened so fast. Did you know that covering for someone is also a crime? Maybe you know who fired the shot, and you just don't want to say. It's called being an accomplice to murder, said the captain. The kid looked dumbstruck. I didn't know that, sir. Honestly, it all happened so fast. Did you also know there is a second crime being committed by the killer if they are threatening a subordinate to covering up a murder? It's called retribution. If someone you know is telling you they would hurt you or kill you for telling the truth about this killing, then creating fear of retribution is a crime. I didn't know that, sir. Yes, Private Clark. It is a crime, and a very serious one. We do not look kindly upon those who threaten retribution to subordinates. If you know anything, you are free to tell me. I will make sure you are safe from the one threatening you, and I'll have them removed immediately. Is there anything you'd like to tell me, soldier? I'm sorry, sir. I don't know what you mean. I was in my foxhole this morning when I heard this rifle shot, and I jumped. I don't remember anything after that. Then everyone started shooting, said Private Clark. The young man looked sullen and weak. He slouched in the chair, staring into the distance, 100 miles away. Pacing back and forth across the tent, Captain Williams looked into the private eyes. He'd seen this before, after a fight. Unfortunately, the captain felt each man knew something he did or didn't want to say. Confessions didn't come easy. Captain Williams thought about a case 6 weeks ago where a junior enlisted and a captain fought behind a bar in Morocco. The enlisted man should have been court-martialed and the officer reprimanded. Turns out the two men knew each other from high school, and they fought over a girl they both knew. Neither confessed to starting the fight, and no witnesses came forward. The answer stared him in the face, but the guys covered for each other. Captain Williams believed the same thing might happen here. He released the private and stood at the tent flap, trying to piece together everything he knew. The men on the line were all lying to him. That much he knew. Kasserine Pass, February 19th, 1943, as Rommel's 10th Panzer Division plowed through the defenses covering the Kasserine Pass. The 26th Armored Brigade and the 26th Combat Team dug in along the canyons, running west towards Thala, Tunisia. The Americans put up stiff resistance, then withdrew. Hours of gunfire and hundreds of dead and dying littered the sand in their brutal retreat. Around 3,300 Americans were killed or wounded, and over 3,000 were taken prisoner. On the southern flank, Lieutenant Myers and the men of the 26th Combat Team held on as long as they could. Lieutenant Myers, we need to get those men out of those holes and behind the tanks, yelled Sergeant Anderson. Sergeant Anderson, you will leave those men where they are. They are the only thing between Rommel and Algeria. Do you understand? But sir, they are getting massacred out there. I just saw 3 men get run over in those shallow holes. They have to pull back. Sergeant Anderson, I will not tell you again. See to your men, that is an order. As Sergeant Anderson left the lieutenant, his anger fumed. He ran towards his line and did what he could to check on his men. Those men left, held out as long as they could, as the Germans moved closer and closer. He knew they couldn't hold the line. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Myers carried armfuls of ammunition to his men until he ran out. His radio man died early in the fight, and the 2 men who followed already wounded. Grabbing the radio, he jumped into a crater and found a soldier lying on the ground. 2 men lay beside him, already dead, as this one stared into the sky. Soldier, return fire, said Lieutenant Myers. I can't, sir. The words came out in a hopeless tone. I'm out of ammunition. We all are. That's how they died. They just ran out. Then they got shot. The exhaustion was clear. The battle raged on, and everyone fought on as best they could. "Lieutenant, what do we do?" he said pleadingly. "Private, what is your name?" he asked. "Private Clark, sir." "Private Clark, you are now my radio man. Get this thing working and listen for orders. Do you understand, Private?" he said. "Yes, sir." He struggled to talk from lack of water. He moved slowly, but he made it to the young lieutenant's side and grabbed the radio. No sooner than he'd picked up the handle, and he heard the words. "I say again, pull back, pull back. Lieutenant, they ordered us to pull back." The words came out in a half-shout. Without hesitation, Lieutenant Myers gave the signal for everyone to pull back. The Germans held nothing back that day. They took Kasserine Pass, and they intended to keep it. By nightfall, every man, not killed or wounded, pulled back to Buchebka Pass. The Germans came from the east, and Sergeant Anderson guided his men out of the fight. Lieutenant Myers directed them south and along the cliff walls. By midnight, they were digging in and waiting for reinforcements. "Private, get over here and start digging. 2 men per foxhole, all along this line. The rest of you follow with me," said Sergeant Anderson. "Sarge, when do you think we'll get some water?" asked a soldier. "I'm working on it. Even if I have to take the lieutenant's canteen myself." All along the line, the remaining 110 men dug in and waited for anything that looked like help. Tank and truck noises echoed through the canyon. Everyone felt on edge. "Sarge, what do you think happened today?" asked Private Taylor. "We suffered a loss today, kid." His expression mild and disappointed. "We suffered a big loss today." Sergeant Anderson kept watch as Private Taylor and Private Clark dug the foxhole. Private Clark fell silent and moved at half the speed of Private Taylor. Private Taylor nodded at the sergeant. They both looked at the young man, struggling to keep sand from falling back into the hole. A look of concern and understanding crossed the sergeant's face. Taking the shovel from Private Clark, he began digging and let the man rest. He finished the hole and told the others to get some sleep. Each man took a 2-hour watch, leaving Private Clark last. Midway through, around 1500, a shot rang out. "Private, what did you just do?" asked Sergeant Anderson. "He wouldn't let us leave. We were there all day. He had to die." The rest of the men opened fire. Then the shooting died down. "We can't go back. We can't." Tears left dusty tracks down his face. The poor boy cried. "What do we do, Sarge?" asked Private Taylor. "We keep our mouths shut. That's what we do. I'll send him back to the aid station when they get here. He's done." The author created the thoughts and characters. This is a story of fiction. The events related to World War II have some factual information, but most details are from the author's imagination. The murder of Presi Bavver. The Blauwevmans County Police Station was a horrible place for officers and criminals alike. The station had been built in 1932, and to most everyone's sadness, had been one of the only buildings to hold up during the Second World War. The station was built from old, withering bricks, and the man who was in charge of keeping the ivy along the sides of the building contained was too busy hitting on women to actually get the job done. The inside was even worse. The oak doors were creaky on their rusty hinges, and the musty concrete jail cells were cracking due to the recent heat surge the Netherlands were experiencing. The small cubicles for officers were tight, and the air conditioning rarely worked. To make things worse, the computer system was terrible. Sometimes, officers would sit for hours just to wait for a 12-page document to load. It didn't help that Blauwevmans was a city in the middle of the mountains, away from most metropolitan. Just getting into the next county took 2 hours. The only good thing that had happened to the police station in the past month was that the exterminator had came. The rats were gone, and they wouldn't be back. But from where Evian van Beek was sitting, she swore she saw a rat scurry past the chief of police's office as she and Lucas Hoysk waited to be called in for questioning. Evi tapped her feet on the wooden floors, anxiously looking around. The police station was crowded for a Sunday night. Some officers were packing up to leave for the night. Others cursed as their computers failed to upload their files. It looked like one of the cops, Sergeant Shea, was having a small party. Evi leaned over her seat, watching some of the officers chat and shove forkfuls of red velvet cake into their mouths. Maybe a birthday? Evi slouched back into her chair and sighed. Lucas bit his lip, staring curiously at the ceiling. Evi knew that look. "What denk je wel net?" Evi asked, pushing a dark hair out of her face. Lucas shot Evi an alarmed look. "Evi," he hissed, "talk ahead angles." Evi gave him a puzzled look. They were both studying English as a world language. They were almost fluent. But why practice for the upcoming test when they're in a police station about to get questioned as suspects of a murder? Evi looked around before repeating her question. "What are you thinking about?" Lucas rubbed his strawberry blonde hair. "They can't understand us if we talk in English," he said, his Dutch accent well enunciated. Lucas tilted his head to the side, indicating the officers eating cake behind him. Lucas continued, a worried look on his face. "I know the plan didn't exactly go according to plan." Evi shot Lucas a deadly glare. "Lucas, we killed..." Evi peered over her shoulder, making sure the officers weren't paying any attention to them. She lowered her voice. "Presi. We killed Presi, the mayor's son. But they have no proof it is us. All they saw was the security tapes," Lucas stated, exasperated. "We were running. So what? That could mean We were running away from the murderer. Evi bit her lip. We did it. We have to confess. If we don't, and they find out it was us, there will be much bigger. Is it consequences? Lucas shook his head. Consequences, you mean? But what if they don't find out it was us? We could lie and be done with this. And what if they do? Evi hissed loudly, tears sparkling in her eyes. She tugged at the neckline of her purple shirt. Either way, I do not want to end up in Gavanjanus. Lucas frowned. I'm afraid neither lying nor telling the truth will get you out of jail. At least we have a shot if we lie, but that is not the right thing to do. We could get a worse sentence if they do find out it was us. Lucas, we killed someone, Evi cried. Small tears began to flow from her blue eyes and stream down her face. Lucas looked over at her helplessly, gritting his teeth. His knuckles were white as they gripped the seat of his chair. They're going to call us in any minute, Lucas said softly. So pick your poison. Evie dried her tears, sighing sadly. She looked up and pointed to the chief's door. Lucas, the chief. Ich kommt heran. Evi gasped. Lucas suddenly looked very worried, but he put on a fierce face. As the chief turned the brass doorknob from the inside, Lucas took a deep breath and whispered, Let's go, Evi. Barvan de Vries was a tall man with wispy black hair and piercing dark blue eyes. He wore his shiny gold badge proudly and was never without a gun under his sweater. In the work area, he wore his gun on his utility belt. Much to the chief's pleasure, the weapon seemed to intimidate the teenage suspects in front of him. The two, according to his files, were seemingly clean, but were the primary suspects for the murder of Presi Bavver, Evian van Beek, and Lucas Hoysk. Chief de Vries's lips curled. This would be fun. The chief put on a menacing face and looked from Lucas to Evi. The girl was fidgeting slightly, almost unsure of what to think. Lucas, however, seemed relatively calm. It was an odd combination of suspects, especially partners in crime. But then, many odd people had entered the Blauwevmans County Police Station. This pair would be no different from the rest. But, the chief thought, odd combinations often have, shall we say, different stories. Barvan tapped his door with his knuckles, his eyes trained on Evi. His first victim. The chief gestured to Evi, whose eyes widened. Evian van Beek? Evi bit her lip. It looked as if the girl was blinking back tears. Ja, she answered. De Vries nodded approvingly. De tide is here. Komen, Evian, the chief said, clapping his hands. Evi looked desperately at Lucas, and then at the chief. Alsjeblieft, een moment? She asked in a small voice. Lucas gave Evi an alarmed look as the chief processed what the suspect had just said. De Vries scowled, but gave in. Prima, the chief muttered, his eyebrows furrowing. Fine. Evi repeated in English, sighing. She turned to Lucas. I'm telling the truth, she said sternly. It's the right thing to do. Lucas looked angry for a moment, but then softened. His cheeks were red. Fine, he spat. But if we get out of here with no mark on our permanent record, you can thank me. So you are still... Evi stopped, eyes glancing toward Bavver. At least I will have done something for the good of the world. I am, as they say, avenging his death. If that is right context. Evi lowered her voice. We killed him. Jail time, nothing will take that fact away. Sergeant Patrick Shea stepped out from the open room. His party was being held. He had been leaning on the door sill and listening to the pair's conversation since they had been seated. Sergeant Shea nodded to the chief. Mynheer de Vries, Shea addressed the chief. Bavver raised an eyebrow. Ja? He asked. The sergeant gestured to the teens. Shea turned and gave Lucas and Evi a small smile. Then, in crisp English, he said, These are our killers, sir. Evian van Beek and Lucas Hoysk, convicted of the manslaughter of Presi Bavver